We are still in Chapter 3, Section 3, and we're going to be talking about the second part, the great industrialists, the people that we know and study through history, the entrepreneurs and investors who came up with these ideas or programs that create wealth in America. First person is John D. Rockefeller. He's going to be the person who's going to lead the oil industry with the Standard Oil Company. He thought competition was wasteful, so he decided to create a monopoly. He developed it as a trust, which was a legal body to hold stocks in several different companies. With that being said, he set really high prices for the consumers. He created secret deals with the railroad companies, and Standard Oil, by 1880, controlled 95% of the oil industry. So if one person controls all aspects of that production or all aspects of that industry, the prices are high. And who's going to be affected by this are the average people, the smaller companies, and everybody behind. This is where we're going to start talking about this whole idea of trust busting, which will be a little bit later. Andrew Carnegie, we're going to talk about him quite a bit. He's going to be controlled by the steel industry after the creation of the Bessemer steel process, and he wanted to make the cheapest and best product using vertical integration. He's best known for the U.S. Steel, which we're going to talk about him a little bit more, and also some of the strikes in the next section, because not all of his practices were in the best interest of the workforces which he employed. So the whole idea were robber barons or philanthropists, you decide. Philanthropists were people who both donated large sums of money to community. That could be things like charities and hospitals, universities, libraries. And then there are also robber barons. Robber barons were business leaders who became wealthy through dishonest method. So both of these were ruthless businessmen who worked their way up from the bottom up. So when you look at both Carnegie and Rockefeller, all the great things that they did when you're talking about creation of jobs and the creation of philanthropists back, there was a lot of the negative behind it too that we don't see. That's why it's really important that we understand that that's what the Gilded Age is all about. While it looks really pretty, when you go to our Carnegie Library, there was a lot of stuff that was happening behind the scenes to make sure that that person or that company really worked. There was a lot of people who were suffering, a lot of people who worked very, very dangerous jobs for very low wages, and they're the ones who were the backbones to build these people. Carnegie in itself did donate a lot back, and you can't fault him for the fact that he was extremely successful, but that's where the whole idea of the Gilded Age comes from. J.P. Morgan, another person, he's the biggest banker in the United States. He's a leader in businesses, and he bought shares of stock in several businesses during the Panic of 1893. And as a large stockholder, he won the seats on many boards of directors. He used the money to buy different railroads, and he eventually bought into the steel industry, and he became the head of U.S. Steel. You still hear his name in a lot of the banking industries of today. So with all these people coming up and creating these gigantic businesses and these gigantic properties, the United States government decides that they need to start looking at ways to try to help the average person. So the government's going to intervene with something called the Sherman Antitrust Act. And what it's going to do in 1890 is it's going to prohibit trusts and monopolies, meaning that can a company or can a business become actually too big to actually hurt the American people? With that, we're going to see the workers' rights movement next, and how the government's going to interfere or intervene to say, first of all, is the company doing something well? Can the company do something better? And how is it affecting the consumer and the worker? We're going to look at that again in detail. The whole concept, again, is we want to preserve the idea of free enterprise, which means the freedom that we can to do our own things, to be successful, and to invest and make money and make wealth. Did monopolies and trusts threaten the free enterprise system? That's going to be a question we're going to talk about in just a few.